Tonight on a special Let It Rip.
Debate the issues. Don't be scared. What are you afraid of? I guess if I had a record like yours, I would be afraid to debate it as well.
There will be no debate in the race for Detroit mayor, but this evening, we welcome challenger Anthony Adams, his qualifications for the city's top job, his message to voters, and why he thinks the incumbent Mike Duggan refuses to go one-on-one with him before the election. Time to let it rip. Our focus tonight, the race for mayor of Detroit. And our one and only guest is the challenger, attorney Anthony Adams. Nothing is off limits. Everything is on the table. We also invited incumbent Mayor Mike Duggan to appear tonight. He declined, but the door is still open. We're willing to give him the same amount of time in the same format at a later date, and we hope he agrees. But on the panel right now, two of the region's best reporters who also happen to live in the city of Detroit, Fox 2's Amy Lang and Fox 2's Randy Wimbley. Plus, as always, anchor reporter Charlie Langton. Now, we begin tonight with a brief opening statement from the candidate. Mr. Adams, the floor is yours.
Well, certainly, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to your viewers. This is the most important race since the election of Coleman Young to determine policy directions on how we're actually going to spend the hundreds of millions of dollars that the city has received. We know that the needs are great, and yet the people who work in this city, the working class people, have been forgotten, as have their neighborhoods. I'm running as a transformational leader who understands the culture of the people who live here, who is connected with the people who live here, who understands their needs and concerns, and what we need to do in order to move our city forward in a robust manner. We need a city that works for everyone, not for the rich, not for the connected, but for those people who work every day, toil in this city, who are struggling under the weight of a bad transportation system, lack of affordable housing, flooding continuously. We need someone who understands that crime needs to be addressed. We need to face these issues head on. We need to talk about them and bring to a resolution the issues that are impacting the city.
All right, thank you, Mr. Adams. Let's begin our questioning right now with Randy Wimbley. Randy.
Attorney Adams, 255. That's how many homicides we've had so far this year in the city, and that's up from 248 at the same time last year.
Yes.
What specifically would you do to lower crime in the city?
Well, first of all, we got to understand that there is a direct connection between crime and poverty. We're not going to police our way out of crime, and we've got to understand and be much more intentional, interventional in our strategies. This means addressing and dealing with our at-risk youth, people who are involved in gangs. How do we do outreach efforts to bring them into programs designed to make them productive? How do we provide with the educational and training that they need in order to become productive citizens? We also need to understand that there's got to be some level of hope and aspiration that a mayor must speak to. And the problem with the guy that we have in there now is that he never speaks to these issues. Clearly, we need to allocate resources to programs that are designed in an interventional manner and not being so reactive in our strategies. We have a public health crisis in our city because high gun violence is endemic of public health issues in our community that we need to address.
Well, Mr. Adams, before I go to Amy, I want to ask you a quick question, quick answer. If you had been the mayor 4 years ago, would you have fired Police Chief James Craig? If you become the new mayor, will you fire Chief James White?
Well, you know, that's the irony of this whole situation is that for the last 8 years, we were told that crime was under control, only to discover that it was not. And so when you look at Chief Craig's performance, clearly what is happening now is evidence that things were not managed in the right manner. The new chief of police just got there. I guess we got to give him some leeway to see what strategies he has, but he can't do it by himself. He needs assistance of other trained professionals to intervene and work with people in our community to reduce the level of gun violence. And that means we've got to talk to people and listen to understand where they are and what they do in order to provide them with a pathway to productive citizenship.
Amy Lang, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, good to see you as always. We've certainly known you for.
Are you an east side or a west side?
I'm on the west side. I'm actually just down the street from Randy Wimbley. We live in University District.
Okay.
I moved here a couple of years ago, so I do have some other questions for you too as we move into the later part of this broadcast. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit right now about the severe storms that we've seen, the severe flooding, the power outages, and the fact that we've heard straight from the water folks that, hey, climate change is here to stay and these things are going to keep happening. You're going to keep flooding. Our infrastructure is not going to be ready for this for some time. In fact, we don't even know how it's going to be ready for this. But at the same token, we've also heard from DTE that, they're sorry about all the power outages amidst their record profits, but they, are spending a significant amount of money to invest in tree trimming, et cetera. So I guess my question to you really is, as the mayor of the Motor City, what would your commitment be to combating climate change? And what's your solution to dealing with these, these utilities and to easing the burden on Detroiters?
Well, I think part of the issue is that there was a lot of confusion in the beginning as to the cause of the flooding. And I say that there are very simple solutions that we could take. For example, we do a very poor job of actual systems maintenance in the city of Detroit. Part of what we should be doing is we need to be vacuum sucking on a regular basis, sewer catch basins throughout the city, and running cameras through these sewer lines to see where we have collapsed sewer. A major issue that we have in our city is that we have so many collapsed sewers in the system that is leading to flooding, because when water backs up in the system, there's no place else for it to go. So that's a maintenance issue. That's a responsibility of the city and the people that run DWSD. In addition to how we have our infrastructure design, it's designed to force more water into the system. We have to change the architecture of our infrastructure design to divert more water out of the city's sewer system, using our parks for water conservation districts, creating more bioswales across the city in order to address those issues so that we take more water out of the system. We also need to be giving credit to businesses to construct stormwater detention basins in their own facilities. We should be giving credit for people who are designing systems and ways to take water out of our system. These are very practical things we could do right now that doesn't require the hundreds of millions of dollars investment that they want to spend. There are also some issues with Great Lakes Water Authority and how they actually manage their system. And now we discover in Macomb County that, lo and behold, there are issues there. There are issues system-wide that we have to address, but no one wants to hold anyone responsible. When I was the director of the water department, we could manage the system ourselves and do what we need to do. We can't do that now because we have to kind of work in this cooperative fashion. As it relates to DTE, I've been very vocal in that where they're investing their money is not where they need to invest their money. They need to be investing their money much more in clearing lines in the city of Detroit. Their tree trimming budget is a pittance of what it needs to be. And I posted numerous photos on Facebook which show trees overgrowing utility lines, which is a major issue. We should be working in concert with them, especially for alley clearances, to cut, to trim, and cut back on these things so that we don't have overgrown barriers to people getting utility service. And they need to be much more responsive in how they actually allocate their capital dollars. They're spending far too much money downtown Detroit when they need to be spending in the neighborhoods where people live.
Charlie, your turn.
Well, good to see you, Anthony Adams, as always. Yes. You were the deputy mayor under former Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick. I'm just curious, have you talked to the former mayor? Would you seek his endorsement? Would that help you or not? And if you are elected mayor, would you go to him for advice?
I haven't talked with him. I wouldn't seek his endorsement. The other guy, I think, actually went to his wedding. I didn't attend. The city we've all moved past Kwame Kilpatrick. Kwame Kilpatrick is the past. I'm being much more retrospective in how I approach the issues and things that I've learned, understanding that integrity matters in the city, honesty and transparency. These are issues that are, quite frankly, lacking in our current administration. And so I tend to be much more inclusive, much more transparent, and much more direct and honest with the people who live in the city.
Well, Mr. Adams, despite that shiny new arena and the huge office tower being built downtown, the population of the city continues to decline.
Yes.
How do you plan to stop the exodus of people and improve the quality of life?
Well, we need to understand that it's going to continue to decline unless we address two critical issues. One is the issue of lack of what people perceive as a quality education system in our city. And to that end, I call for the creation of a chief education officer, someone who is really to be an advocate for all children in the city of Detroit. When I was general counsel of the school district, it had 200,000 students, 27,000 employees, 250 buildings. It was the big dog, but now we have charter schools, which more kids are in charter schools than in DPS. And we also still have a presence of Catholic schools in our community. We have more kids that are out of district than any district in the state. That is not a good formula for us to grow our city and to support our education system. So the mayor, even though he doesn't have control over the schools, needs to be much more aggressive and intentional and being the biggest cheerleader and bringing whatever resources to bear through a chief education officer who will advocate for all the children in the city of Detroit. We have to harp on educational excellence, and that means educational excellence in the classroom, educational excellence in training, educational excellence in people being creative about how we approach the issue, because we can't address the city decline until we address education. Similarly, we have to address education in the context of how we are going to deal with the issues of crime in our city. If we have people who are committing crimes that have low education, low training, low skills, and low job prospects, they're going to continue to commit crime. How do we have what I call a get your stuff together day, where we bring people in and say, look, what does it take to get your record clear? How do we help you become a productive citizen? How do we provide you with job training? Maybe we need to even provide you with a stipend necessary so that you don't stay in a life of crime while you're trying to get your education. If fighting crime with police officers was a solution, we've spent more than $3 billion, and what have we ended up with high crime rates in our community?
But Mr. Adams, we also have crime in City Hall. Let us not forget that
yes.
Former City Council member Gabe Leland pled guilty to taking a bribe. He resigned. Andre Spivey pled guilty to taking a bribe. He's likely headed to prison. Does that mean we need to have new laws, new rules to get tougher on corruption in City Hall?
No, because we have all the laws that we need. What we need is people who understand the importance of integrity and honesty in government. You know, when you accept the responsibility to work for the city of Detroit, your paycheck comes from the city of Detroit. There is no extra benefit other than the value of service that you provide to the people who live in our community. And we need people who are committed public servants who understand that we're there not to serve the interests of the contractor class, not to serve the interests of the big business people in the community, but to serve the interests of the people who live in this city, who count on us to provide them with the level of service that they need and that they are entitled to. And I think we got to begin to change the culture. We have to also change how we finance campaigns in our city. We got dark money PACs, which are being fueling attack ads on candidates such as myself. Platforms being run that are allow for a lot of disinformation in our community. Maybe we need to go to a public funding formula for our election campaigns to eliminate the influence of money in politics, which is crippling and is creating a culture of corruption that we have to break in our city.
Well, very quickly, who are your donors? Where does your money come from?
My money comes from small people in the city of Detroit, as well as my friends. And a big portion of it has come out of my own pocket. And so when I'm elected mayor, I will be an unbossed official, because I finance this primarily through small people, small donors in our community. I haven't received, I think, one dime of any PAC's money, which I'm proud of, that I've been able to get this far for the grassroots campaign, which is focused on people issues and not the issues of the people who have all the money.
All right, panel. That's all the time we have for the first segment. Stay with us as our discussion continues with Attorney Anthony Adams, candidate for mayor. We are back here on Let It Rip with Attorney Anthony Adams, candidate for mayor. Before we continue this discussion, Mr. Adams, I want to ask you about what has been going on regarding the mayor. Mr. Duggan has refused to debate you, accusing your campaign of being hateful and divisive. Do you hate the mayor?
Of course not. I have nothing but love in my heart for the mayor. But his refusal to debate me is real obvious. He doesn't like to be confronted about his failures in office, whether it's failures in providing affordable housing for the people in the city of Detroit, his failure to create an affordable water policy, his kowtowing to the corporate interests in this community at the expense of the neighborhoods who need to be funded, his inability to direct resources to allow people to fix up their homes. He is a guy who is afraid of a confrontation that I bring because I'm the most qualified candidate that this guy has ever faced in his entire life. And he doesn't want to stand on the stage with me because he doesn't want to be reminded of all the failures and all the frustrations of the people in the city of Detroit that I've listened to about his policies. And so for him to even suggest anything like that, people know who I am. I have a track record of being above board and being all about the people in this city. And so for him to even suggest something like that, I noticed when they said it, they couldn't even say it with a straight face. And when I went to his house the other day, he certainly didn't come out and tell me that.
Amy.
Well, I'm curious now what happened when you went to his house the other day. What did he come out and tell you?
Well, he didn't come out at all, just like he didn't appear on this show. He doesn't want to stand side by side with someone who can dissect his policies and yet offer creative solutions on how to address the issues impacting the city of Detroit. He makes his bones by making so people believe that he is the end all and be all of everything. And to stand on the stage and to debate someone with the issues, why would you not be willing to come forward and debate your record about the Stellantis plant? You talk about it in your ads. Let's debate the policy to see whether or not the benefits that were promised were done. Or even with the Flexing Gate project. Every project he talks about, he should be willing to debate that. He's a well-financed incumbent. He's got all the money. He's got all the endorsements. And yet he's scared of a little old attorney guy who's out here running a grassroots campaign who will thoroughly dissect the issues and his failures. And he doesn't want to be reminded of that.
But I'm sorry, Amy, go ahead.
I was going to just kind of move on to a different topic, Charlie, but if you want to continue with this, go ahead.
Well, if I could just point out, though, I mean, I understand the mayor doesn't want to debate, but the reality is at the primary, though, Mike Duggan got 72% of the vote. You got 10%. What makes you think that what makes you... What makes you think a third of the mayor's supporters will change and vote for you in just a matter of a couple of months?
It's not a question of that. You're talking about 14% of the people actually voted in a primary. You had a crowded field with 10 people with very little media coverage. And in fact, there's been very little media coverage of this race. And I'm sort of thankful that Fox 2 has given me the opportunity to have a platform. But now we're talking about brass tacks and issues and policy differentiation. He knows and understands that I can differentiate the policies, but also offer a perspective that people may not have considered. And so his failure to debate is more about him and his fear of standing on stage with a guy who was more than qualified, more than versed in the issues, has the mental dexterity to go from water infrastructure to DDI transportation, to housing policy, to tax policy. He doesn't want to do that because he's fearful of being exposed for the fraud that he is.
Talking a bit about tax policy, I'm sorry, Amy, if I can jump in real quick. Talking a bit about tax policy, corporate tax breaks, and the like. Talk about what role should that play in the city's development? What role would it play in your administration? And also, would you be for revamping the community benefits agreement ordinance so that more of the goods, if you will be going to the residents if these companies do get, tax breaks from the city?
Absolutely. Our tax capture, tax abatement policy has been disastrous to our libraries. We have 6 libraries operating currently in the city of Detroit because of how they're using the tax capture that normally should go to fund libraries is going to fund arenas. I think that's a disgrace in the community that has literacy issues that we have to have very few libraries open. It's also impacted the ability of our schools to actually borrow money to improve their physical plant. And so when you talk about tax capture policy and tax abatements, it needs to be put under critical analysis to determine what is the real benefit of what we're getting. And clearly every benefit that's been talked about when you look at the community benefits agreement have not been honored. We've had corporations that would rather pay a fine than pay a Detroiters. The balance of the community benefit agreement needs to be shifted. The people in the community need to get real benefit. We need to get real jobs. We need to have real milestones to make sure that they're doing exactly what they do. I'm not concerned about a financial penalty. I'm more concerned about the human capital loss of the opportunities that we lost by spending billions of dollars to build things where we're getting no real precipitous benefit for the people who live in the city of Detroit. And so, yes, I'm going to be very much more aggressive because I'm not in the back pocket of businesses that want tax abatements and tax captures. I said in one forum that if we never grant another tax capture in the city of Detroit, another tax abatement, we have enough work that we can do in the city of Detroit if we do the little things, help people fix up their houses, allow for tree trimming in their neighborhood, provide them with support in order to grow businesses that already exist. And so it's a complete change in policy and approach. And he understands that I can do that and deliver, because I'm not talking about changing things. I'm talking about transforming how we actually do business in the city of Detroit.
Mr. Adams, can I just stick on the tax issue for just a real quick moment, and not necessarily about business taxes, but about property taxes, about people being historically overtaxed in the city. And for a city that is, as Huell mentioned earlier, losing population, how do we draw people in? As someone who has lived in the area for 20 years, but only recently moved to the city of Detroit, I saw an immense rise in my property taxes from where I was in the suburbs, and quite frankly, for fewer services and for a lot more crime. So that is a huge issue in terms of drawing people in who may want to move to the city to be part of its comeback, but see that as a real deterrent.
Well, there's got to be a sort of across the board adjustments in the overall tax structure, which is too high. People in the city of Detroit pay too high taxes for too little. And we've got a lot of people paying taxes that qualify for programs that they don't know about because there's not a robust enough outreach effort to do that. How do we redesign our tax structure? How do we adjust the tax burden on people in the city of Detroit? I've really toyed with the idea of eliminating sort of the property tax in the city of Detroit, because it serves as a major detriment to take equity out of the hands of the people who actually need it. And when you look at the number of folk that have actually lost their homes as a result of overassessment and overtaxation, we had 150,000 people lose their homes over his administration. And we have 40,000 people now currently today on the list as houses are subject to tax foreclosure. Clearly, our tax policy is not helping us. It's driving people out of the city. It's creating a renter class in our own city where we have more people that rent versus own their homes. That is not a recipe for a robust city to grow. And so we really have to examine that tax structure, figure out how we reduce the burden of people who live in here so that we can have a much more fair system that gives the equity to people who live here versus allowing the government to capture that money and misspend it.
Should the city help with getting residents mortgages when they move in? Are there enough banks that will actually loan Detroiters money to own their own home?
Well, the numbers say that Blacks who actually try to get mortgages in the city of Detroit are denied twice the amount that is whites. And so there's a structural racism issue that exists there, which needs to be addressed. My solution is the city of Detroit holds billions of dollars in the bank. And to the extent that they want to hold the city's money in their accounts, then they need to show us their policies on how they become much more aggressive in lending to people who actually live in the city of Detroit. The irony of it is they have a lot of programs that are designed to bring people into the city, but someone who lives in the city, there are practically no programs that help them stay in their house or refinance their house because of the structural racism issue that exists. And so when I'm mayor, when you hold our money, you rest assured that I will be looking at your reports, your CRA reports, to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do in lending in the city of Detroit. And there's another aspect of that lending problem which no one ever talks about. We have a state agency, the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, the largest affordable lender in the state, and yet they do very little lending in the city of Detroit. Why is that? What are the reasons why they're not lending to allow people to refinance their homes, to allow people to get home improvement loans? Why are they not doing that? If Detroit is the base of the city, of the state, and we need to have a robust city, lenders that are supposed to be lending in the city need to do their job, and no one's holding them accountable because there's a cozy relationship between business and government that's not helping the people who live here.
We are out of time, but we thank you for being here tonight. Stay with us for final thoughts on Let It Rip. So many people to the pandemic in Detroit. Anthony Adams, 2 questions. Are you vaccinated, and would you support a vaccine mandate for city workers?
Yes and yes.
Randy, what are you thinking tonight?
It's a shame that we're not getting a debate with Mayor Duggan and Mr. Adams. Detroiters ultimately are losing out because that's not going to happen.
Amy?
Well, there are a lot of important issues at stake and a lot of money to be spent. And so, yes, we should be hearing from both candidates.
Charlie.
After a primary, everything is off the table. The numbers don't matter. It is a general election. I would have liked to have seen a debate. I think certainly these are two qualified candidates. There's no question about that. And I would have preferred a debate, but I'm happy that you're here. And I hope that the mayor will come as well.
Mr. Mayor, the invitation is still open. Thank you for watching this edition of Let It Rip.